Hello, I'm Henrique. I'm the head of immigration at Portugalize, which means that I oversee everything related to visas, residency permits, and other practical aspects of moving to Portugal. And today we are talking about the freelancer regime in Portugal. And for that, I have Manuel here, the head of taxation. So if you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes, I am Manuel. I'm a tax attorney in Portugal. I've dealt almost exclusively with expats for my entire career, and I oversee every matter of taxation in Portugalize from the moment you're thinking to move here until the moment you are already here.
As I said, we will talking about the freelancer regime, which I think it's one of the most common ways of our clients set up in the country. Can you please tell me a bit about how does it work?
I'll start by explaining why it's one of the most common ways that people choose to work when they come to live to Portugal. The reason is that most of our clients will work for companies outside of Portugal. They will work for the companies in the places that they were living in, that they are originally from. It's very common to work for American companies because the salaries are higher, etc. With this being the case, a lot of the employers having these remote employees, they prefer to have contractors instead of people who are actually employed by them, which could force them to have an employer of record in Portugal and could put them at an extra compliance risk. This is one of the reasons. The second reason is that highly mobile individuals are often not employees and they just have multiple clients. They are freelancing and they have multiple different clients and their job is less strict. They don't have a fixed schedule where they earn the same amount every month and it fluctuates a little bit. This is one of the reasons. The second reason is because it's very efficient to be a freelancer in Portugal. The reason is that if you are employed in Portugal, you don't get a lot of deductions to your taxable income. So this means that your gross income is very similar to what your net income for tax purposes is. You only get to deduct the amount that you contribute to Social Security. Outside of that, even if you have some expenses, you don't get to deduct them. The reason is because it's presumed that the employer will support those expenses on your behalf. As a freelancer, you get to deduct any expense that is connected to your activity. So this means that if you purchase software, hardware, office furniture, if you take some work trips, some lunches, for example, all of that can be used as an expense. There are two ways to consider what your taxable income is if you're a freelancer in Portugal. The first one is called organized accounting, and it's like you had a company. Your taxable income is revenue minus expenses. So you actually have to declare all of your expenses, get invoices with your NIF on it, and your profit will be the amount that is considered for taxation. There is also some other way to calculate your taxable income that's called the simplified regime of accounting. As the name calls it, a simpler version. You don't have to ask for invoices for your expenses. Some are still useful, but it's not like your profit, it's equivalent to revenue minus expenses. There is a fixed percentage of your revenue that becomes taxable. This is very good because it gives you some free expenses. The normal percentage that is considered for tax purposes is 75%. So this means that even if you have just a few expenses, you get this extra 25% that's considered as expenses. So if you earn 100K, for example, 75K would be the amount considered for taxation. A lot of our clients are engaged in intellectual professions, so this means that they basically sell their time and effort in exchange for the payment, and it's not like they are buying and selling goods. For example, in that case, the expenses would be much more significant. In the cases of these activities, where if you are working in marketing, if you're working as a programmer, etc., you don't really have a big percentage of your revenue as expenses. So to have this free deduction and to have your taxable income be only 75% is a very good advantage. And then in the first year, this 75% get reduced to half. So it's even less. If you earn 100K, only 37K are taxable. And then on the second year, it goes up to 56%. And on the third year, that's when it goes to 75%, and it keeps being 75% from then on. So for this reason, especially because people who are coming to live here, no matter what their age are, will be on the first years as a freelancer in Portugal. Even if they are freelancing for 10 years in the UK, it will be the first year in Portugal. So they will get these very beneficial percentages that will very significantly reduce the taxes that they have to pay. We offer a service for these freelancers where we help them pass invoices, consider the expenses, fill VAT declarations, any declarations that they have to do, personal income tax declaration, Social Security. So all of that we can take care of at Portugalize, and we have a very good structure for this, and we think it's very efficient.
Yeah, we offer this service because to be a freelancer in Portugal comes with some tax compliance obligations, correct? You just
Yes.
mentioned them, so can you just give a quick recap of what being a freelancer entails in terms of obligations?
Yes, on top of having the NIF, which everybody needs to have if they are working in Portugal, and access to the Portugalize Finances, which is our online tax portal, you need to enroll yourself as a freelancer, create the activity, state the activity that you're going to pursue, give an IBAN, etc. So fill this declaration to inform the state of the activities that you are going to pursue. And then you have to pass invoices. Every time you get income, you need to pass an invoice that identifies the client and identifies the service and the price. Then there is VAT to be charged, especially if you have Portuguese clients. If they are abroad and they are companies, sometimes you don't have to charge them VAT, but still this is something to consider, VAT on the invoices you pass. And then VAT on the expenses that you have. You can, if they are connected to the activity, you can claim that VAT back. So this is very useful because you can go to a store, let's say you buy a computer for 1,000 euros, 23% will be VAT, and you can get those 230 euros in this example back. So this is something that we help with, VAT refunds, etc., and to make sure that you are VAT compliant, because you need to make at least quarterly declarations, sometimes monthly declarations. And then there is the personal income tax declaration that is common for everyone, and that's once a year, and we also help with that. And then there is an extra social security obligation, which is also quarterly. Even though as a freelancer you are exempt on the first year, you then have to start paying social security monthly. Yeah, there's a lot, some more compliance obligations. It's not as complex as having a company, not even close, but yeah, there are more things that you have to do in comparison to if you are an employee. If you are an employee, your employer takes care of all of your compliance obligations, and you just have to file one personal income tax declaration per year. We can also help with that, but the freelancers need monthly support.
And yeah, basically our service covers everything that the freelancer needs, right? So they can just focus on their work and we handle everything that's related to the tax compliance, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The point is, it's very hard to. It's even hard for Portuguese people sometimes. So let alone imagine coming to a new country and having to deal with these portals that are in Portuguese, etc., and making declarations that have to comply with the regulations. So we want to take off that burden out of everyone and just let you, if you're working in marketing, that you focus on marketing. If you're working in technology, that you focus on the technology. And we handle all of this boring compliance stuff and make sure that you don't have problems, because we've also seen people who start working in Portugal, they don't create an activity, they don't pass invoices, and then 1 or 2 years later, something the tax authorities notice and they have to correct everything backdated, then it's a very big problem. It creates a lot of fines, a lot of stress at that moment. So it's good to structure yourself before starting to work and just handle everything right from the beginning, and we always make sure that happens.
Okay, that was great. But something that maybe it's worth to point out is the difference between being a freelancer and having a company, a LDA. What are the main differences and what does fit better for different people?
Yeah, so the difference is that as a freelancer, you are working under your own name. You're passing invoices under your own name using your personal NIF. And your liability is unlimited. So that means that if you were to get into a debt, your whole estate would respond to that debt. If you have a company, however, it's like there is a separate entity, a separate person that's operating. That person has limited liability to its own assets. So if the company were to contract a big debt, they wouldn't go after your personal estate. That's one of the advantages, the limitation of liability. And the second is that it creates a whole different structure that can deduct all of its expenses. So it would be like organized accounting that we mentioned earlier. And there is a very strict separation of the estates. To take money out of the company, there needs to be a justification, such as a salary or a distribution of profits. So the bank accounts are separated. It's two different people. It's very useful to have a company. If you have partners, then it's really the only way. Or if you want to qualify for the IFICI, the very big tax incentive that we discuss throughout the website, and it's one of our main focus. So if you are not interested in qualifying for the IFICI, or you don't work in an activity that could be qualified, then you probably want to be a freelancer. You also want to be a freelancer. Or if your income is not the highest possible, it may still not be worth it to have all of the compliance requirements the company has. Being a freelancer is much simpler. And then there is another possibility, which is that we have any incentives for people who are under 35. We'll cover that in another video. And being under 35 with a freelancer may mean that you don't pay any taxes on the first year, and that you don't pay almost any taxes until you are 35. As you cannot compile the under 35 with the IFICI regime, you wouldn't want to create a company in this instance. You would want to be a freelancer and use the under 35 incentive.
It's really rare that a company setup is the most efficient way unless you are willing to and are going to qualify for the IFICI, correct?
Exactly. Almost never, yeah. You'd have to have a specific type of business that really has a lot of expenses and that makes it worth to deduct all of your expenses instead of working with the percentages that are quite beneficial. So maybe a business such as e-commerce, for example, or just normal commerce where you are buying and your margins are thin, then it could make sense to create a company. Or if you're going to make a big investment and have a lot of expenses on the first year or first years, that will only provide valuable over the course of the next 5 or 10 years, for example.
Okay, great. Thank you, Manuel. I think this was pretty comprehensive. And thanks for watching. And we will be back with more videos about all the aspects related to moving to Portugal and taxation.